Okay, guys, this is truly amazing because all of our previous interviews were recorded in our marvelous cave studio, but here we're recording this interview with Lubomyr Luciuk, famous Ukrainian historian, Canadian American Ukrainian, in Archipenko room.
Yeah.
So we can actually
Remarkable.
sort of pan around.
Wow.
Pan around just for a sec so you understand where we are actually. Archipenko room at the Ukrainian Institute of Narrative. Anyway, as we spoke earlier, very simple topic. Our position, our team, Civic Hub of Kyiv, our position is very simple. Russia is in the UN illegally. The two sort of foundations for Russia to be in the UN are two pieces of paper that, from a point of view of UN Charter, are just that, pieces of paper. One is so-called Almaty Declaration, where some countries, not all, but some countries of the former Soviet Union are saying, oh, we're not against Russia inheriting, inheriting the nuclear stockpile and blah, 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 right? And the second piece of paper, which is indeed, from a point of view of the UN Charter, is a piece of paper, is a letter from Yeltsin to Peres the Player, basically saying that, now we used to be Soviet Union, now we're Russia. And actually our team, thanks to Mr. Loutsenko, the former Ukraine's representative, we discovered a bunch of amazing documents, legal opinion of Karl Fleischhauer, who was the chief legal counsel of the UN, saying that since Soviet Union was dissolved, Russia had to apply from scratch. Mm-hmm. And they did it before Christmas, so that, quickly. Just share your observations on this thing.
Well, look, on the one hand, I think everyone would agree that the peoples, and I say peoples, or the nations of what is today called the Russian Federation, which I would personally describe as still an imperial project, a colonial project.
Of course.
The peoples, the many different peoples, including the Russians nation, should have representation at the United Nations, eventually.
Yes, of course.
But the various nations that inhabit the space of the so-called Russian Federation, and again I call it the so-called Russian Federation, also have the right to national self-determination. So we think of the Chechens, the Kalmuks, and many others.
Bashkirs and
Tatars,
Tatars,
there's dozens of them.
Volga Tatars, whatever, you name it.
They all should have representation, as should the Russians. However, as you pointed out, the way in which the Russian Federation assumed for itself the mantle of the Soviet Union, which was, of course, in the United Nations, is questionable. And so I think the initiative you've taken to discuss this subject, to raise it in the forum of the United Nations, is an important one. How is it that one constituent republic in the entire Soviet Union should become the bearer of the authority of the Soviet Union, and most particularly, of course, of the Security Council? This is, I think, the critical thing. You now have a state, the Russian Federation, which is breaking the rules of the United Nations Charter and absolutely vetoing any possibility of peace. And at the same time, how did it get that power? And I think, so the questions you've raised, and again, I'm no lawyer, some of you are lawyers and scholars in this matter in greater detail than I ever will be, but it seems to me to be a reasonable question. And so I applaud your effort.
Thank you very much. In fact, Russia has invented a term, continuator state, which is ridiculous. There is no such thing in international law. I mean, all the documents, Belovesia Agreement and the same Almaty Declaration, are talking about successor states.
Yes, successor.
Of the Soviet Union, all former 15 republics are indeed successor states. But Russia invented this ridiculous term that doesn't exist in international continuator. Right?
It's the first time I've heard it.
No, it's true.
So it could be. No, so I mean,
Держава продовжувач, continuator state, which it just doesn't exist.
Yes, it seems to me to be fabricated.
Of course.
To put it in a very delicate way. I think one of the great tragedies here, you mentioned it yourself, is that the way in which the collapse of the Soviet Union resulted in the removal of nuclear weapons from Ukraine, from Kazakhstan as well, and their relocation to the Russian Federation, and giving the nuclear card in effect to the Russian Federation. That was a big mistake. I think I was one of the very first people to write an opinion editorial in the Globe and Mail in Canada, that's our national newspaper, in which I cautioned Ukraine.
I actually remember that.
Yeah, I cautioned Ukraine, don't give up your nuclear arms. Now, we can argue whether Ukraine could have been a nuclear power, could it have maintained them, was the economy there, was the will to do it there? These are all other interesting questions as well. But at least as a bit of foresight, if I can call it, I said, why are you doing this so quickly? We have the Budapest Memorandum.
Yeah.
That piece of toilet paper has proven its worth.
Yes.
Security guarantees from the Russian Federation that they won't do it, that they will respect your political sovereignty and independence and territorial integrity. We know how that played out from 2014, and it's simply escalated in recent months. However, for whatever reason, Ukraine did not accept that kind of advice, and I think unfortunately now the terrible war that Ukraine is fighting in its self-defense, the way in which a war is being waged by the Russian Federation against Ukraine, and Ukraine is a genocidal war, a genocidal channel to that war, also militates strongly against the continuing presence of the Russian Federation in the Security Council. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. It was brief, but it's such a great honor for us, for our team, to talk to such a prominent historian.
My pleasure to be with you, but I'm a political geographer. I'll correct you on one thing.
Yeah, all right. No, but I mean, you're a historical writer,
Sure.
Very well known around the world.
Thank you.
And actually, for our viewers who don't know, you have a Virka from Mr. Zelensky.
Yes, I was honored a few years back, I guess it was 2019, with the Cross of Ivan Mazepa by President Zelensky. I had an opportunity, this was given to me by the ambassador at the time, but I met President Zelensky shortly thereafter in Toronto. That's the only time I've met him. Of course, he's risen to the position of being Ukraine's Moses, as it were. He's clearly a man of great intestinal fortitude and strength and character, and Ukraine is very lucky to have him, as is the world, as is the free world. So yes, I was honored with that distinction, and as was my colleague, Professor Vietrovich, who he and I are currently just completing work on a book about Soviet counterinsurgency in the Ukrainian nationalist movement that will appear in February, March of next year through the McGill Queen's University Press. So, these things have somehow all pulled together, and it's just been a fascinating work.
No, in fact, Professor Yutrovich is a kind of member of our extended team, good friend of ours, so we're working together.
Yes, well, I mean, birds with feather flock together.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Luciuk,
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. Good.